Man, everybody, it's good morning to you. It's Wednesday morning coffee and football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by Jerry Hamilton, who's looking tan out there. You've been on the road a little bit lately, Jerry. The Wednesday morning coffee and football, of course, brought to you by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. We got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk a little recruiting. As we mentioned, Jerry's been on the road. He went to see Kelshawn Johnson yesterday. Also, the Action Network came out with its picks for over and under of win totals for every SEC school. Texas among those with 10-plus wins expected. And then also we're going to talk a little California recruiting because, Jerry, it looks like the Longhorns going to head west a little bit in recruiting this year, maybe more than I've ever witnessed in my 30-plus years of covering recruiting, actually. We want to get into that. But let's start with Kelshawn Johnson, wide receiver recruiting. You were out at Hitchcock yesterday.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing I always say about him. That kid he's quick, he's explosive, he accelerates, he gets the top end, and he is really fast. And he doesn't even train to be fast. That's a good sign, right? When you're fast and you don't train to be fast. But I had a great 10-minute sit-down interview with him that we'll have here on Texas Football later today. I think Texas remains the favorite over Texas A&M, USC, Texas Tech. He's changed up some official visits. He knocked out Penn State. He's going to Arkansas. He's going to Texas Tech June 7th through 9th, Texas the 14th through 16th, USC the 21st through 23rd. Holman Wiggins, A&M, was there last week, and they're really trying to get him to bump the Texas Tech visit. And go to A&M that 7th through 9th weekend. We'll see what happens there. But I think Texas is a pretty good spot. Chris Jackson will be at practice today per the staff at Hitchcock. And look, I just think I think the kid is so fast. There was a Power 4 coach, and people are going to run with this and say I said it. I didn't say this, by the way. There was a Power 4 coach there late last week to watch a Hitchcock workout and said, looks like mini Xavier Worthy. I mean, that's, so he's kind of got that. And what I think people that coach meant by that, and this coach went up against Texas last 2 years, by the way, is he's got that sleek, that 5'11", 162, 165-pound build. But he's got a similar skill set. And I'm not saying he's going to run 4.21 and be a first-round pick. That remains to be seen. Nobody thought Xavier Worthy was out of high school either, except, we did rank him a 5-star when we were at On 3. But, he's got a similar skill set, similar mindset, that toughness about him. So I can see why a college coach that is in the Big 12, a receivers coach that went up against Texas, would say that. But we'll see what happens with Kelshawn. I think Texas is the favorite there. I don't think anything's happened to change that recruitment. His mom loved the visit. His mom and sister went up there with him that last trip. And they both loved the visit. So it's all positive for Texas there right now. And Bobby, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Texas has some decisions to make at wide receiver.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because let's get into that because I wanted to give people a sense of who all Texas is even recruiting at wide receiver right now, because we think they have 3 or 4 spots, but it sounds like more than 3 or 4 are very, very interested in the Longhorns at this point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think, look, DeCorian Moore is number one, right? I mean, he's going to be number one. He's a super freak. He should be number one. He's number one on everybody's board. He's a super freak. So, by the way, he hasn't released his official visit dates yet. And they're working around an OT7 national championship, which he wants to play in. That is at June 7th through 9th weekend. So that's kind of having to adjust some of the official visit schedule for him to make that. And that's why he hasn't released any dates yet. Obviously, Texas will get an official visit in the 21st through 23rd, 14th through 16th. It's going to be one of those 2 dates. So DeCorian Moore's number one. Jamie French, I think, has a place in this class, and I think Texas is in a good spot after being at Mandarin last week in Jacksonville. We'll see what happens through the June official visits. Miami will make a big run in June. Tennessee will be there at the end of the day. Will Ohio State? I don't know. He doesn't have an official visit set there, and he wants to make a decision in August. So he says right now, I'm going to officially visit in the fall. We'll see. Colin Simmons said the same thing about LSU. right, when he committed to Texas. So Jamie French has a spot in the class. Then you get the Khaleke Lockett and Kelshawn Johnson. Could French and Lockett be in the same class? I don't know about that. But so we'll see what happens there. And then you have Kelshawn Johnson. I think those four guys kind of stand out to me. Then you have in the next group of guys, Marcus Harris from Mater Dei, official visit scheduled June 21st to 23rd. Texas has been on him a long time. He's a SoCal kid, which we'll get into California shortly. And you have Andrew Marsh and you have Dalen McCutcheon coming in the 14th through 16th. And we'll see if anything else happens with any other wide receivers out there. Chris Jackson was by Lancaster last week to take another look at Emmanuel Choice. But he has a full official visit schedule right now. There hasn't been an official visit scheduled there. Texas is continuing to take a look at a couple other guys, both nationally and in state. So we'll see if any other official visits are set. But I think right now, 3 to 4 man receiver class, I think it's kind of who those top group of guys are. And then it's how much could it expand outside of that if Texas doesn't get, if they're not going to go for 4 for 4 in the top 4 guys. I just don't believe that's going to happen, right? That's very, very, very rare. But if you go 3 for 4 of that top group, do you still take a 4th? That's what will remain to be seen.
Jerry, I look at it, and it's to my point of view, you're right. You're not going to get everybody you want, but you need to get the thing that intrigues me, not only about DeCorey Moore, but Kelshawn Johnson, and kind of separates from these other guys. Kelshawn's one of 2 guys that are speed guys.
Yeah.
DeCorey Moore's the other one. Kelshawn Johnson, a true speed guy. I'm not saying that Jamie French and Khaleke Lockett are slow by any stretch.
Right.
It's not their feature set, right? And I feel like Sark likes speed a lot. So let's see where that actually ends up. And you have guys like Dalen McCutcheon. I think it's a great receiver.
Yeah.
May not be that kind of speed yet either. So interesting group of receivers overall. I mean, Texas, to your point, Texas is not going to have its choice per se, but this is something, it ties into something I wrote today on TexasFootball.com, Jerry. They may not have their choice of every single player, but there are so many good players that Texas has on the hook right now.
Yes.
That I don't think these scholarships are going to last like they did into football season last year.
I agree.
Where we saw Ryan Wingo, Colin Simmons, Xavier Filsaime, who else? I mean, there are half dozen guys that decided during football season. I'm not sure that's going to happen this year because I think Texas has too many big-time guys on the hook right now.
Well, so I posted on OnTexasFootball.com, and obviously we don't have time to go through all 44 names, but I posted this morning the breakdown of the area in Texas in the state the 44 known official, locked-in official visitors are from. And that gives people that if you go over there to OnTexasFootball.com, that'll give you a good look at where these guys are at too. But to your point, Bobby, 44 official visitors right now, and that's not counting DeCorey Moore, who hadn't announced his date yet. So you're at 45. Texas just added 2 guys from California, which we're about to get into early this week. So Texas isn't done. That number is probably going to creep up to 48 to 50 official visitors. And with the level of talent Texas is attracting for official visits right now, I totally agree with you. I think this class will be at 20 commitments, maybe 21 by the time the first ball is kicked off this season.
Yeah, good stuff, Jerry. All right, look, we're going to get into a little bit more recruiting later. We've got that to talk about. We also have the Action Network came out with its top list. But before we go there, Jerry, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. Each and every Wednesday is brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy at the Lowy Law Firm. Adam and his group have been helping injured Texans for more than 2 decades now. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, ATV accident, motorcycle, what have you, and you think you might be due compensation, all you have to do is pick up the phone or reach out online, go to loweylawfirm.com, reach out to Adam. They'll give you a free consultation, no strings attached, and you can go from there. It's really simple, loweylawfirm.com. They try to make it as simple as possible for folks as well. All right, Jerry, Action Network came out yesterday. This is good stuff here. Talking about wins, and we've been talking about where do we think Texas is going to win. They came out with Texas at 10.5+ wins overall. And we made this graphic for folks. We brought it up here. Georgia, 10.5. The only other team in the SEC that people are saying are going to have 10.5 wins. Georgia and Texas. The over-under is 10.5. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think this is, when I looked at Georgia, if they get the 10.5, meaning 11, on this schedule, they actually have a tough schedule this year. I think they're going to drop a game in the regular season. I mean, so they have Clemson and Atlanta. That's a home game, right? Neutral to start the season. But it is to start the season. They're at Kentucky. Kentucky's always Georgia's a great matchup against Kentucky because that's what Kentucky likes to do, plays right into the hands of Georgia. But at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. I mean, Georgia's got 3 tough road games this year in the SEC. If they beat that 10.5, they've had a hell of a season. Now, I'll say that. I agree with the top 2. I really do. I think the interesting one there is LSU. I would probably take the under on LSU right now. I think they lost a lot. You lose a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, 2 first-round receivers, would have been third if the guy wasn't betting on everything. They lost 3 D linemen in the NFL draft. Now, they have what most people are saying is the actual best offensive line returning in college football. I'm trying to motivate you, Kelvin Banks and the guys. People are saying that LSU has the best offensive line coming back in college football. So that's going to be a strength for them. How much, but they replaced both coordinators. How much is that defense going to improve? You lost your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, the first-round receivers. So there's a lot there for LSU to get to that 9.5 win total. If LSU got to beat the 9.5, that'd actually be a hell of a coaching job for me. I think Missouri is an interesting one. I think Ole Miss is very interesting because they put all the eggs in this season. And there you see A&M at 8.5. There you see Oklahoma at 7.5. But my big takeaway from this, and obviously Florida's at 5.5 because they have the toughest schedule known to man. But I'll say this. What that shows you is Texas' first-year schedule in the SEC is really favorable.
It does. Here's the one, a couple that caught me by surprise if you're looking at this list, and Jerry's went over it already, but Mizzou at 9.5 over.
They got a great schedule, Bobby.
Yeah, but they're coming off a great season. But look, they lost some people.
Yes.
They have their quarterback coming back and their receiver, but they lost some key pieces, especially on defense. And I want to say this. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz is now running through the list of guys that Barry Odom brought in as defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And so I'm not so sure. I like Mizzou. I love their quarterback. I love their receiver. So I'm not trying to – I think that's the one I would maybe sell short a little bit here.
And so let's talk about
along with LSU, although I think Nussmeier is going to be a fine quarterback at LSU.
He's got some moxie to him. We had him at the Deion Sanders Prime 21 camp when he was younger when I was ESPN Under Armour. I like Nussmeier's moxie. He's got a little something there too. But Missouri's road schedule at A&M, at Alabama, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State's doable. They have Arkansas at home, Oklahoma at home, Auburn at home, Vanderbilt at home. So they may have the best SEC schedule this year. And that is something in their favor. But I agree with you. Here's the other thing with Missouri. Now they have expectations.
Yep.
It's been a while since that program's had expectations, right? The end of the Gary Pinkel era, or right when they moved to the SEC. So they have a little bit more on their shoulder and on their shoulders and on the plate this year. That'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Like you said, they did lose some key pieces, especially on defense. I think they've done a pretty good job in the portal, but it's different when you have expectations. So that'll be interesting to see. Oklahoma's schedule, I think, is interesting. That's getting a lot of attention. I'm about to pull up Oklahoma's schedule so we can go through the Sooners' schedule real quick. I think it's very interesting with Oklahoma this year. So here's Oklahoma's schedule. Okay, start off Temple and Houston and Tulane at home. Great home schedule, right? Then they have Tennessee at home, which I think is kind of going to be their game that kind of defines their season in some ways, because they have Tennessee at home, then they go to Auburn the next week. So that's a pretty tough back-to-back to open up your SEC time for Oklahoma. Obviously, then you have a week off. You have Texas, South Carolina, but they're at Ole Miss as well. They're at Missouri, Alabama at home, at LSU. That's a pretty tough schedule Oklahoma's got. I think Texas has an easier schedule than Oklahoma year one in the SEC. That Oklahoma 7.5, that's a tough call whether you go 8 or not, Bobby. First year starting quarterback, brand new offensive line. Now defense will continue to improve the longer they're under Venables and the more he adds additions to that defense. But I might take them at 7-5 right now.
Yeah, I look, I'm looking at all this, and I feel like if I were to say with OU, with the new quarterback, that's an issue. They've got Auburn right out of the gate. They get them at home. This is the thing. These two teams are very interesting to me. OU had a good second year under Brent Venables.
Yeah,
really did. 10-3, upset win over Texas, of course, big one for them. Mentally, and then the problem is he kicks Dylan Gabriel to the curb pretty much unless Jackson Arnold take the reins. That's a big move from a coach that then comes back and is expected to only win 7.5 the next year.
Yeah.
That is can you do that at OU? I don't know if you can. And I want to say this. So Oklahoma has much bigger appetite than 7.5 wins. Even if that's unrealistic this year, maybe for them, much bigger appetite. We know that, and they should. They're one of they're a blue blood. People won't like to say that, but they are one of the blue bloods of college football. Period. Just like Texas. Here's the team that's interesting to me. How long does Hugh Freeze get at Auburn if he only wins 7 this year? I mean, Auburn is not very. They go through coaches like
Yeah.
They run through those guys pretty quickly. They're sitting there. They were at 6-7 last year and only at 7.5 this year. Those things are going to be interesting. Arkansas 5-5. 5.5 wins. They don't make it to a bowl. Sam Pittman's gone. Even if they do get to a bowl, Sam Pittman may be gone if they only get 6 wins. Shane Beamer, Frank's son at South Carolina. I think, we talk about Florida being on the precipice of losing it all. South Carolina's got to take a new quarterback.
Yeah.
And win more than 5 games. I mean, how long can the shine last on Shane Beamer getting a redo? So
they lost a first round pick at wide receiver, and then Juice Wells did not return. He goes to Ole Miss. So they also have a little bit to replace there as well. But Bobby, if you look at this, so Texas schedule, that obviously they play Georgia, and they play A&M. But after that, if you look at the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams on this list in the SEC, Texas plays 6 of them. That's a good place to be if you're Texas. Not that all this is going to be perfectly correct, but it's a sample size of how good of a schedule Steve Sarkisian has in year 1 in the SEC to me. That is the one thing that stands out and that's always stood out, because remember when the schedules first come out and you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a tough schedule. But then you saw Florida has continued to struggle, turning the corner under Billy Napier. So that game looks a little different on paper, right? They're a good team, but who knows what they're going to look like by the time they get to Austin. And I'm here to tell you, if they don't win their opener, things are going to get ugly. If Miami rolls in to Gainesville this year and wins, things are going to get ugly in Gainesville fast for Billy Napier. That's almost like a must-win game for Florida. So you just don't know what they're going to be like by the time they hit Austin. My only hope is Steve Spurrier's there and we can find a way to get him on the show. So that's the only thing I care about with that game, really. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think Kentucky is always kind of undervalued, and they do a really good job maximizing their team. I think they did well in the portal at wide receiver, getting Barry and Brown some help. The key with Kentucky that's interesting, they took Gavin Wimsatt out of Rutgers out of the portal.
Yep.
That to me means Vandergriff they're not sold on him being the guy. So the last 2 years you had Will Levis, he was the guy. And then you took Devin Leary out of the portal, who I think ended up being drafted. And you knew he was the guy. Do they know who their guy is this year? That's what's interesting to me. with Kentucky. I think the running back from Ohio State is a tremendous fit. That transferred in training is a tremendous fit for Kentucky. I think Deion Walker is one of the best D tackles in the country. Will be a first rounder. Dumas Johnson, the linebacker from Georgia, is going to get drafted. They'll be playing behind Walker. They do a good job in the portal. They do a good job maximizing that program. But do they know who their quarterback is going to be? They have known the last 2 years at this point in time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Texas and Texas is so well situated right now, not only because of the schedule, but because of the quarterback itself coming back with Quinn Ewers, the quarterback room and as a whole with Arch Manning. Last year, Texas had to get through 2 games without Quinn. Actually, two and a quarter, right? Malik Murphy took him down the field in the fourth quarter against Houston for a score. And so I think people underrate the need for a backup quarterback a little bit, and that will help Texas compared to some of these other teams stay consistent, I think, as a whole. All right, this is the the Wednesday. Man, I am losing track of my days. I don't know this is what it does to me in the off season. There's a cadence in the season where I know what every single day is, but this is a Wednesday live stream brought to you by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Jerry Hamilton. Jerry, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about with respect to recruiting was we were looking at this earlier today and yesterday. As of right now, Texas has 9 players from the state of California scheduled for official visits. I've been doing this. I mentioned this. I've been doing this 30 plus years. John Makovic at one time brought in, I think, 5 or 6 Californians.
Yeah.
For official visits. This is back in the mid-90s. I don't know that Texas has ever had 9, 10 guys, and they're trying to get more.
Yeah.
They're not just stopping at 9. They're trying to get more in for official visits. I think that Steve Sarkisian finally has this recruiting staff where he wants it, where he can focus not only on the Deep South, but also his native state of California.
Yeah, I think Johnny Nansen was a huge addition. Not that Jeff Choate didn't do good work. I mean, he went out to Hawaii, right? But he didn't have as deep of California connections in life in coaching as Johnny Nansen has. So I think it's threefold, really. And somebody brought this up on ontexasfootball.com, and they had made a great point this morning on that. Look, I think it's Johnny Nansen is now part of the Texas program, and he has long-standing relationships. And where Sark's been a head coach, Johnny Nansen's been the DC position coach, was coaching at USC and UCLA and Arizona. So, I mean, that guy's been living in California in recruiting for the last decade plus, right? So he's got all those connections. So he's also got a good feel for what kids in California are thinking. And I think that's important. So USC, UCLA, Oregon moving to the Big Ten. Does that mean those guys can't be successful? Absolutely not. But does that mean that's what the kids in Southern California and California prefer? Now, Urban Meyer and Ohio State have got some really good players out of California over the years. Notre Dame, right? They all have. Michigan. But is that what kids prefer? Because kids have grown up watching SEC dominate. SoCal kids. I mean, SEC's had a good run recruiting kids out of California as well when they put the time in. So is that what the kids prefer? Or do they prefer the South? Better weather, SEC. I mean, so that's what's interesting. Here's the thing you have to say. Johnny Nansen's going to have a really good feel for these kids. So again, we talk about casting a wide net, which I think is important. So if Texas brings in 9 or 10 guys, they're trying to get Adonis Curry, the corner from Lancaster, California, Court Hill. He's a big-time guy. They're trying to get him in too. That could be 10 if they can get him in. But you cast a wide net to sign 2 or 3 of those kids from California. But, Bobby, I think to what we kind of talked about before the show last night, we think they're recruiting the right guys in California. I mean, the linebackers are big-time players. Yeah. I mean, Hayden Lowe, big-time player at edge, right? Josiah Sharma, big-time guy at defensive line. And they're also stretching from SoCal to NorCal now, too, with Nansen. I think that's a difference we're seeing, is they're not just SoCal-based.
Yeah, up to Folsom.
Yep.
which is where Sharma's from. Hey, what is the latest on Josiah Sharma? I haven't talked with him about him in about a week or so. Jerry, what's the latest with the defensive lineman out of Folsom?
Yeah, he's visiting June 14th through 16th. Then he goes to Bama the 21st through 23rd. Georgia offered him. We'll see on that. They offered him a few weeks ago. I think right now it's Alabama and Texas. And look, this is a recruitment that he was committed to Washington. He decommitted from there, obviously. He's visited Bama twice since Kalen DeBoer was hired. So I think Texas, Johnny Nansen, Kenny Baker, they got him on campus. They got him and his mom on campus. They used to live in Arlington. There's some positives with Texas. But my thoughts on this, doing this for a long time, is Alabama's the team to beat until they're not. He's been there twice since DeBoer was hired. That's the last official visit as of right now. So there's obviously a strong pull to Kalen DeBoer for Josiah Sharma. And Washington was the first big program to really go in on Josiah Sharma when DeBoer was there. So, and then when he gets to Alabama, nothing changes. They go after him just as hard as they were before. Again, so he's been there twice. He's been to Texas once. The June officials will decide it. But I will say Alabama's the favorite until they're not in this recruitment because of the long-standing relationship with Kalen DeBoer. But I do know this. I'm not sure that the mom and the family will stay in California long-term. Could they move back to Texas? Not out of the question. Could that change the course of the recruitment? Quite possibly. But I think Alabama leads Texas right now. I think we'll see where it goes in June.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it. The 9 Californians currently scheduled to visit the University of Texas. All right. Hey, Richard Walker has a super chat here. Who do I send the invoice to for the coffee maker I just bought? Because you can't have coffee in football without coffee. Amen. I've got it every morning, guys. Thank you very much. All right, Jerry, what else can they not have when you go on the road and you need to manscape a little bit, buddy? Give it to us.
Well, I mean, look, it's beach bod season. I certainly don't have one, but when I was in Florida, I saw people that did, I mean, I'll be real. That's not me. But look, it's hey there, beach babes. Are you ready to soak up the summer vibes and unveil your ultimate beach bod? Well, you're in luck because our friends at Manscaped have you covered from head to toe with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. And you got to take this on the road. This is the ultimate all-in-one grooming kit that is set to have you looking and feeling your best in the summer sun. Hey, by the way, 230, Colorado State, it's going to be 1,000 degrees. Probably should bring the 5.0. Trust Manscaped and unlock the confidence you need to turn heads this season. Join the 10 million men plus worldwide who trust manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code ONTEXAS, all caps. Let's make this summer your smoothest one yet. Hey, look, and I'll say this is true. The ultimate updated Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Growing and Body Hair Trimmer got a summer makeover. It's waterproof. I've actually tested that. Designed for splashy pool parties. Who doesn't want to have one of those? And beach hangouts. We all wish we. Hey, Charles Barkley won't be in Galveston. He'll be at a different beach, by the way, for those beach hangouts. And by the way, keep your ears and nose. That's very important to the ladies. As tidy as your hedges next door with the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer. Pesky hair, be gone. For those sunny beach days, don't leave home without your crop preserver. The anti-chafing ball deodorant. Let the sun see you shine, not sweat. Manscaped.com, on Texas, all caps.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, somebody asked where Blake Monroe. Yeah, he's taking a few vacation days. He'll be back next week.
Yeah. Thank you for saying something. I'm at a loss for words currently. I'll just put it that way. Hey, we were talking about those. I thought this was a good question. We were talking about receivers earlier. Horn 7 comes up. Who compares to Wingo size-wise of the new recruits? And it's not so much – I want to say this. The rare thing about Ryan Wingo isn't so much his size. It's his size-speed combination. Well, any of these guys compare to him that way at this point? I mean, DK Moore probably a little faster.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean – and Wingo has a catch radius Coachy, that's exactly right. I was going to say that. Blake's out testing the Manscaped 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0.
Oh,
He'll be back to report on it next week. But yeah, Ryan Wingo, because the catch radius, the speed, the ability after the catch, I thought he showed after his first catch on that first catch in the spring game, made 2 or 3 short space moves that I thought were very impressive and telling of how good he can be. And then just the long speed, the vertical speed, strike up the band speed, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. DeCorian Moore's a super freak. He's as explosive as you'll ever see. I'm really that opinion at his size too, because he's not a thin guy. He's 180, 182 pounds. DeCorian Moore. He'll be a 190-pound guy one day with 4.3 speed. So I mean, he's a legit super freak with vertical explosion as well. So I don't know. I think Jamie French, after seeing Jamie in person, very similar to AD Mitchell body type is what I'll say. He's 180, 6'2", 180, 185 pounds in that area right now, but he's not even close to being physically maxed out. I mean, he's going to carry 200, 205 pounds long term. I think he's a different skill set than Ryan Wingo. I think he's closer to AD Mitchell. I think the ability to track the ball, the body control, I think are real strengths of Jamie French. So I put him more leaning towards that AD Mitchell type of category. I think Ryan Wingo's, I mean, I don't know if he's a super freak like DeCorian Moore, but I mean, they're probably 1A and 1B when you combine everything together.
Yeah, the issue I don't see of that group is I don't see the big wide receiver that has ride out speed.
Yeah.
That is what Ryan Wingo is, and those are rare. Those are exceedingly rare. All right, this from Hooked to a T. Will Texas' secondary still be suspect? Seems to be the popular chat, and how OU's linebackers are going to give Texas problems. What do you think about that, Jerry?
Yeah, I think, look, I think the secondary has things to prove, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. Rod Babers talked about it at length. I think Javion Cole was a very good addition to Texas. I think he fits the scheme. I think he makes plays on the ball. I think he's going to be a good player for Texas. I think Manny Muhammad is going to look like a future first, second round NFL draft pick this year. Texas needs Gavin Holmes to continue to come on. I really think that. I think the safety play is going to be improved, much improved with Makuba, Derek Williams in year 2. I think the depth, the athletic depth is better with Xavier Filsaime and then Jordan Johnson-Rebel, whether that's at nickel or safety. I thought he played really well in the spring game, actually. So I think they're going to be improved. To what level they're going to be improved, I'm going to have to see it on the field. I think the pass rush is going to be improved, and that helps your secondary be improved. I think it kind of has to fit together a little bit. I think the Brent Venables scheme's really good defensively. I think he's really good at what he does, Bobby. I mean, look, he's always going to have some exotic blitzes. He's going to bring you things you don't expect. I think he's very good at that. And I think his defense will continue to get better each year he's there as he recruits more guys to that system. But will Oklahoma's linebackers give Texas problems? I mean, look, they got really good players. I mean, Danny Stutzman's a really good player. If he doesn't give Texas problems, then Texas probably beat Oklahoma pretty handily. I would say that. I think Texas is the better team. That doesn't mean they're going to win the game. They were the better team last year.
Yep. That happens. I think that OU gave up points both years to Texas. Will OU score as many points this year against Texas with a new quarterback? And I don't know the answer on that, to be honest with you, Jerry. I don't know that. And that's one of the things where I'm going right now.
I think the biggest thing with Oklahoma when talking about OU is, look, people, I think the overwhelming opinion is, Oklahoma let Dylan Gabriel go because they think Jackson Arnold's going to be a star. Here's what I know about that. They let Dylan Gabriel go because Jackson Arnold was going to walk. If not, he was going to transfer. So they had to make a decision. Does that mean you think Jackson Arnold's going to be a star next year? No. Are you betting on the future? Yes. That was a decision that they were forced into. It was either Gabriel stays for another year and Jackson Arnold transfers out, or they let Dillon Gabriel move on and they start Jackson Arnold's clock on the field. And they obviously went with B. Do I think Jackson Arnold's going to be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the SEC this year? I do not. I think he's got upside ability, but I think year one starter with 5 new offensive linemen. He's got really good wide receivers to throw it to, though. I think their wide receiver core is a little underrated by people, but still, first-year starting quarterback, first year in the SEC, that's a pretty tall task for a kid.
He reminds me a lot of Sam Ellinger. That is my comp for Jackson Arnold, just for the record. Now, not saying he's that kind of person or whatever off the field or leader off the field. I don't know enough about him, but that's what he reminds me of. Thick upper body, thick runner, kind of, no nonsense kind of guy. Hey, a couple of things. Odin Horns here. Colorado State at 2:30, 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 120 heat index. If you missed the news yesterday, the Longhorns announced their schedule. The first game is at 2:30 at DKR against Colorado State. College game day on week 2 is going to be on week 1 is going to be at A&M for the Texas A&M Notre Dame game. That'll be the prime time on ABC. So a couple of announcements there from that situation. Then we have Troy Williams. Does it not frustrate you guys that Sark is skipping over great talent in Texas for good talent in Cali? I'm confused. When did Cali become a big football state? They've been a big football state because of their population base forever.
Yeah.
Just 20 years ago, they had more players in the NFL than any other state.
Yeah.
Texas, Florida, et cetera. They've fallen off in the last 20 years, but they still have, I think, the 3rd most NFL players. So it's not like, and I want to say this, I don't think Sark's skipping over great talent in Texas to go get good talent in California. That's kind of that just doesn't happen that way.
No, I would say this. James Hetfield, Ricky Williams, Bryant Westbrook. There's been a few from California that were really good at Texas and Hall of Famers. But I would say this. Hayden Lowe, I think, is a big time guy. The 2 guys that Texas added to the official visit list this week, Brandon Huey's asked for the video on the linebacker from J. Sarah Catholic. I don't know if our producer Matthew could get that up. I don't know if he has time. Madden Ferreo. But look, those guys are big-time players. I mean, look, Riley Pettijohn and Elijah Barnes are 2 of the best linebackers in the country. I was talking with somebody in Florida last week. They were talking about Riley Pettijohn because Florida State was trying to get him on campus. They're like, they talked to somebody at Florida State. They don't think there's 3 better linebackers in the country than Riley Pettijohn. Okay, so Riley Pettijohn, Elijah Barnes, 2 of the very best in the country. But Tagoa, the kid committed to USC, and the linebacker from J. Sarah Catholic, those guys are top 50, 60 ranked guys in the country as well. And here's the highlights of him. Bobby, I said this yesterday on our recruiting breakdown live. I like any 6'3", 215 that plays with a cast on his hand and it plays with no fear. But if you watch how this guy flows to the ball and then watch him open up and run when it's time to go, and when he hits you, the play is over. That guy's one of the very best linebackers in the country. And so is Mattia Tagoa, who's committed to USC from San Clemente. This guy's like a bigger, faster version of Leon Galafal to me, is what this guy's like. I mean, this guy's a big-time player. Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC, Texas, Washington. I mean, that's high-level recruit there for people. So I don't think Sark is passing over players. I think they were trying to recruit the very best out of the best of the best in California. Sharma's probably the best D lineman up there. Hayden Lowe may be the best edge. Dejon Lee, the corner, is one of the top corners in the country. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, official visits. So, I mean, look, he is considered one of the top corners in the country. I think what Sark's doing is trying to bring in the very best players he can in this program, no matter where it takes him in recruiting, with a focus, obviously, on Florida and Georgia and Louisiana and Alabama and Arizona and California. And I think Texas is going to start recruiting the Las Vegas area a little bit more because of Johnny Nansen. They've had a few really good players come out of there. So I don't think that Sark is passing over great players in Texas for good players in Cali. I think he's trying to find the very best players he can that fit the system, fit the culture, and what he's building at Texas. You're on mute, Bobby.
I'm not a believer that he's passing over on anybody that's a great player.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. So I understand where Troy's trying to go with that, but I don't believe that. Hey, here's some other questions and topics here. Billy Bird, great, congrats to OTF, great coverage, guys, and to my son Michael, graduating after just 5 years at Texas in Austin. Hook 'em, Billy. Congratulations to your son, man. What a great accomplishment. We had Jermichael Finley on yesterday. He just got his degree after 10 years, 15 years of being out of school. He spent 3 semesters back at Texas to get that done.
Hey, Bobby, I want to make another point on this. To Troy's point, there's also another point to this. It's hard to keep all the guys in Texas. It just like we talk about, Kirby Smart signs 3 or 4 of the top 10 in Georgia. Okay, you aren't going to keep 8 or 9 of the top 10 in home in your state, right? A&M and Texas can combine to get 6, right? The days of getting 9 out of 10, I don't know if that happens again. But to this point, if Devin Sanchez wanted to be at Texas, if these guys weren't going out of state, if he wanted to be at Texas, Texas wouldn't be recruiting Dijon Lee. Devin Sanchez is committed to Ohio State. Does he take Texas calls? Sure. Does Texas think he's going to flip? Not really. So that's the other piece to it is Sark is recruiting the best players he can, but all those kids aren't going to stay in state and play for Texas or Texas A&M. Those days are over. If Kirby Smart's won 2 national titles and lost 1 game in about 3.5 years, and you only signed 5 of the top 10 in state like he probably will this year, maybe 6 in a great, great year for him, those guys there's still going to be a couple of guys that go to Clemson, go other places. So I think Sark is recruiting the best. The reality is you aren't going to get everybody. And I don't know if Sark won 2 national titles in a row at Texas if 9 of the top 10 kids in the state would go to Texas, because there's fits, there's look into the depth chart where you are, what other opportunities you have other places. There's NIL. There's so many. Maybe that family's not from Texas, and I think this is a big deal too, guys. There are a lot of kids. So many people have moved to Texas, like so many people have moved to the state of Georgia. These kids didn't grow up with A&M or Texas jerseys on or a Georgia jersey on. It's different. And then there's another piece. A&M and Texas haven't played in 12 years. And I really firmly believe that's hurt recruiting in the state of Texas, keeping guys home. You missed that big rivalry. You missed what kind of made the state of Texas what it was in a way in college football. And those kids haven't grown up with that. They haven't grown up with that. What that rivalry does is creates an in-state head-to-head pride. Look how many kids stay in the state of Alabama. And I know Nick Saban was there, and Auburn's been really good. But that rivalry and that kind of go at each other pride helps keep guys home. And when that vanished, I think that really did what people talked about was when A&M moved to the SEC, it opened up the state of Texas in recruiting. And a big part of that was A&M and Texas stopped playing each other. So that rivalry was gone. And those kids hearing about it for a year was gone. So I think you take everything into account there. And that's kind of what you're seeing in recruiting a little bit.
All right. This is the Wednesday morning coffee and football live stream brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy, Lowy Law Firm. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Jerry Hamilton. Jerry, next question I wanted to get to. This one's interesting from Phil McIntosh. Curious to see what adding USC and Oregon does to the Big Ten, to the offensive style of football. Until now, the only team with offense has been Ohio State and, quote, sometimes Michigan. Well, it certainly hasn't been Iowa. It hasn't been Penn State. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a fair question. USC and Oregon are going to bring wide open offenses to the Big Ten. Will they be successful there, in your opinion?
So talking to a Pac-12 assistant a couple of times last year, I asked him about the teams in the Pac-12, and he said Oregon was the one team that had the look of an SEC team. So I think Oregon physically is going to be ready to go in and hold up in that league, even though they have that fast-paced, more spread offense, right? I think they're physically going to be able to hold up at the line of scrimmage. USC is going to be interesting to me. What does their offensive line look like? And defensively, are they going to be able to stop the run? I mean, D'Anton Lynn has a big job in front of him. So I know what the question is, But with USC, that question is, if they don't improve defensively, if they can't stop the run, I mean, look at what Kalen DeBoer did at Washington last year against USC in that game. If they can't stop the run, they're in some trouble. Their offense won't have a chance to get going really like you want. They won't have as many possessions. Their games are going to get condensed more so than the wide open Pac-12. But I do think Oregon will challenge the Big Ten in different ways, and I think that's going to be good for the Big Ten because Oregon's fast and they're big.
Got it. I want to add this. So, Phil, and I was doing some research on this yesterday afternoon. Penn State is in an interesting situation right now because they have not gotten over the hump of Ohio State or Michigan. They're the clear number 3 in the Big Ten, or in the Big Ten right now. Now you're adding USC, Oregon, and even Washington to a lesser degree.
Yep.
All right. Here's Penn State's schedule this year where they have a chance to kind of show that they're still going to be at least number 3 in this league, okay, or 3 or 4 based on it. They play USC and UCLA on back-to-back weekends. Penn State does. They got UCLA at home, and then they go out to the Coliseum for USC. And then Washington later in the year. So the pecking order of the Big Ten has been Ohio State or Michigan, followed by Penn State. What's the pecking order going to be next year with Oregon's entry? It's not, and Washington to a lesser degree. It's not unlike what we're talking about in the SEC with the entrance of OU and Texas, except there's 4 teams going in from the Big Ten. And frankly, the style of football that they play is so diametrically different. I mean, nobody does what USC does in the Big Ten. Nobody.
Right.
It's just categorically different. And so I don't think you're going to know exactly what they do and how they do it, et cetera. So I think that's a very interesting deal there.
By the way, Bobby, I hadn't looked at Penn State's schedule till you said that. I just hadn't looked at their schedule. They have a college football playoff schedule if they're ever going to have one.
If they can get past USC.
Yeah, and Ohio State's at home. They're at Wisconsin, who is I think is going to continue to be down a little bit. At Purdue, at Minnesota, Maryland at home, Washington at home, who has to replace a lot at USC, Illinois. I mean, James Franklin, man, this is your year.
Got it. All right. We got a couple more questions we're going to get to. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. Our sponsor today is our friend Adam Lowy at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, motorcycle accident, even an ATV, reach out to Adam and his team. They've been doing it for more than 2 decades. If you think you're possibly due any sort of compensation or might be, just give them a call and get a free consultation at no strings attached. Reach out to them at loweylawfirm.com. That's Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. We appreciate his sponsorship of the Wednesday morning coffee and football show. All right, Jerry, just resetting a little bit here. We talked about off the top about you going to see Kelshawn Johnson yesterday. We talked about the receivers that the Longhorns are after right now. We also went over the Action Network's their over-under win total. I want to go back to that real quick, if you don't mind. What do you think of the Aggies win total here? That's one that we really didn't talk enough about because we've got some questions in the chat about whether or not they're going to have an offense. We know they'll have a defense. They're at 8.5 wins total. If Mike Elko gets to 9 wins in his first year, I'd say that's a successful first year for a team coming off a 7-win season.
Well, and I would say this, if he gets the 9 wins in year 1, that means he probably either beat Notre Dame or Texas. So yeah, I would say A&M fans would be very happy if in that scenario. But I think this Notre Dame game is huge for A&M. Look, I think Notre Dame is going to be very, very good. Y'all know I'm a big Riley Leonard fan. I think the receiver they brought in from FIU is a stud to go with Jaden Greathouse. I think Notre Dame actually offensively is going to be the best that we've seen from Notre Dame in a while. I think Riley Leonard could vault his way into being a first-round pick at quarterback, if not a second-round guy. I think they have multiple weapons. their wide receiver position. And how is A&M's offensive line in game one going to be against Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame? I think that's going to be very interesting to see. I think the offensive line holds the cards for A&M's season this year. It was bad last year. They've tried to rebuild that thing through the portal. We've talked about why 2025 is Fasusi's almost a must get for them in recruiting. It's their offensive line class has to be really good moving forward. But I think their offensive line is going to tell the story of their season. They don't have a bad schedule. They have a pretty good schedule. I mean, their road games are at Florida, and that's early September 14th. They have Missouri at home. Obviously, Arkansas is a neutral. At Mississippi State, LSU at home, at South Carolina, at Auburn. That's a pretty favorable schedule. There's a reason people have 8.5 wins. They have a really good SEC schedule this year. Some key games, Texas at home. Obviously, we just went through that home schedule. So, and Notre Dame obviously is at home. So they have a schedule in year one for Elko to make a little noise. But their offensive line, I think, is going to tell the story. They're going to be good on defense. The Nick Scoten, the kid, he's a first-round pick, the kid from Purdue that was originally from Bryan High. I think the kid they just brought in from UCF's really good depth. But how that offensive line performs, I think is gonna tell you if they hit that win mark or not.
Got it. I agree with folks. I think that the defense is going to be good. The question mark is the offense. If they can score 24 points a game to 27 points a game, they're going to win 8 or 9 games. So I can see where it's going from. Mike Elko is a solid defensive coach, and he's going to have some kids that are those upper class guys from that what's left of some really talented recruiting classes, Jerry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, even though Walter Nolan walked, he wasn't the only defensive lineman in that group that they got coming back. Shamar Turner's back. You mentioned Scarton coming in from Purdue. They've got guys.
Oh, yeah. They got multiple NFL draft picks on the D-line. Multiple.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like people are a little dismissive of A&M, but Colin Klein, who's the new offense coordinator there, is going to have to bring it.
Well, and that's the thing is their offensive line has to keep Connor Weigman healthy.
Yes.
He's had a lot of injury issues dating back to high school now, whether that be concussion or the talus bone last year. So he's had some injuries that are concerning for him, and the A&M offensive line has to keep him upright, and they're going to be challenged in week 1 against Notre Dame in that regard. Hey, Matthew Hutchinson, I had a tweet. I wanted to show people this Kelshawn Johnson. I had a tweet yesterday I put up of Kelshawn Johnson running a crossing route when I was there. Just for the people that haven't seen how fast he is, this is a pretty good indication if he can bring up that tweet. I had a video of that. Sorry, short notice there, Matthew. But I wanted people to see that. We talked about Kelshawn, but you can see how well he runs when we bring that up. Somebody's asking about Xavier. Okay. So I think we're going to replay this here. All right, this is him coming across the middle. So if you want to see somebody that's fast, man, I mean, he's just running. He's running away from fast guys, okay? Hitchcock's got a lot of fast guys, and he just zips by everybody. Kelshawn Johnson can really run. I mean, that's a kid who, if he ever trained for track, would run 10.3. He just doesn't. He goes from football to basketball to track, and he plays on a state championship basketball team back-to-back. So that's not a guy who trains to be fast. He was just born fast. But once he gets to a college program and trains to be fast, Bobby, he's going to be a low 4.3 guy.
Yeah, good stuff, Jerry. That's why you go out and do those things and go out and see people in person so that you can actually make the distinguish the differences between players because a lot of people, it's just height, weight, 40, and that's all the context they get, right? If you go out and see people in person, to your point, Jerry, and this is something you've done for a number of years, you understand the differences and the nuances of the player. And I think that's really helpful whenever you're talking about players. All right. This one is a little bit different. We had the question earlier from Troy Williams about why Texas is skipping over guys in state to go out of state if there's great players in Texas. I don't think Texas isn't skipping over great players in Texas. But let's look at this. Let's look at this.
Yeah.
Should it be a concern when top prospects around the nation, like David Sanders out of Charlotte, North Carolina, big offensive lineman, George McIntyre, a quarterback out of Nashville, express their interest in Texas, but Texas doesn't pursue them. Should that be a concern, Jerry? I mean, maybe, maybe not. I mean, I don't know.
Well, so I know Texas did their research on David Sanders, and I think obviously since they didn't move forward with that recruitment, the feedback they got was he might take a visit to Texas, but he wasn't going to end up at Texas. I think a kid that talented, if Texas had a legitimate shot, they would have moved forward with that recruitment. So somebody was very honest with them about that recruitment, because the one thing that Sark has to balance now is, do you want to just come to visit Texas for NIL negotiating purposes and leverage, or are you serious about Texas? And I think that's one that Texas did their research and just didn't move forward. Look, Kyle Flood flew to Cedar Rapids to see Nick Brooks. Nick Brooks comes on a visit. He's coming back for an official visit. Texas could be trending over Georgia there right now. It's close. So Texas did their research there and moved forward with Nick Brooks. There was a reason they didn't move forward with David Sanders, because they could have got him on campus. But I think I just don't think their research told them it wouldn't go their way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that my take on that is, it's not everybody, just because somebody announces that they have interest in Texas. Jameis Winston famously was like, "Oh, I would be interested in Texas." I tried to call him. It still would have been a 3% shot, right? It's not. This isn't like, "Oh, I definitely would have gone there." And the guy's from Austin Westlake. He was from Hueytown, Alabama. Just because Texas doesn't want to enter into a circus doesn't mean that they should have done so. So, and plus, didn't McIntyre already commit to Georgia? Isn't that? Didn't he?
Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah. I mean, so he stayed in state.
Yeah. When Texas took KJ Lacey last June on Elite Camp Day, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you going to do? Hey, Rhett has a question. Thanks, guys. Y'all have any events this summer? No, we have events we're covering, but no events that we're planning on hosting at this point, Rhett. We'll definitely have some. We actually have some announcements coming up for football season that I hope everybody enjoys. We're ready to get back and do our thing at the co-op for sure, as we do so and so. All right. Hey, let me ask you this. I mentioned in today's On Texas Football site, Texas has a big, a pretty large event coming up this weekend for NIL, to benefit NIL from the folks at the Texas One Fund in conjunction with William Morris Endeavor. Okay. They're going to have a golf scramble on Friday. And then Brooks and Dunn has a concert on Saturday night at DKR. Jerry, you mentioned NIL and Texas being one of the better teams at it without question. Does that put Texas in some negative light with some, or does it put too much of shine too much of a light on Texas, because then players are not necessarily coming to Texas just to be at Texas. They're actually trying to get the most they can out of NIL. Do you think that's a significant issue right now for Texas?
I do. And I think it's why the research on these guys is so important, because I do think Texas is used for leverage, because Texas is seen as, hey, the New York Yankees, the LA Dodgers, right? So if you go visit Texas and you can leverage Texas against maybe the school you really want to go to in NIL. So I do think there's a piece of that. And I think that's why, again, when we talk about this, and I think it's taken a lot of Texas fans a long time to get accustomed to, because of how early recruiting Mac Brown really started it in Texas, and it's just continued. But that's why Sark wants to get these kids and these families, especially these out-of-state kids, to campus before an official visit, and really dig on these recruitments and get to know these families and really feel good about the fit and make sure these kids are interested in Texas for the right reasons. So that definitely exists. It exists in basketball too, by the way, big time in basketball. So I think it definitely exists, and makes the job more difficult. Hey, these guys are well paid. Nobody's crying for them, right, Bobby? But it makes the job more difficult on the football and basketball side, because Texas is a leverage play for some, because Texas is seen as the most wealthy school in NIL. Whether it's true or not, It's the way it's seen. I think Oregon's used in that way a little bit as well. From time to time with kids bouncing out for visits out there. Do they really intend to go to Oregon? No. Are they using it for leverage? Yes. Do I think that's wrong? Not necessarily, but I think that's the way it is.
All right. I got time for a couple more questions here. First, I want to tell folks about ontexasfootball.com. If you want news and information when Jerry and I are not on talking about it here on Texas Football, the YouTube channel or on podcast, make sure you check out ontexasfootball.com. Use the promo code OTF OTFOG. Become a member for just $39.95 a year. That's a special that we're only going to run for a little while longer. We're also putting up badges today for people who are OTFOGs on the website. Again, OTFOG. Use that promo code. Get an annual subscription on TexasFootball.com. We'll have news and notes every day, all day on OTF on TexasFootball.com. All right, Jerry, a couple more thoughts here as we really look back at that top, win total for Texas. 10.5 for Texas, 10.5 for Georgia. I would think that Georgia's more likely to beat that number than Texas, yet they still both have them at 10.5. Is that not just indicative of where Steve Sarkisian at some level has expectations outside of Austin? I mean, that's amazing to me because look, this is Vegas. This is, Austin orange-colored, burnt orange glasses on. This is Vegas saying 10.5. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, look, who are the two favorites in the Heisman race preseason right now? Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, right? So quarterback's back. I think Texas kind of had a perfect storm last year to raise expectations through the roof. I mean, when you win at Alabama, and Sark was talking about that the other day over the weekend interview, still he had to tell his guys how big that actually was to put it in perspective. Only one team ever beat Nick Saban by double digits in Tuscaloosa, and they were 52-1 in their 53 home games prior to that. I think the loss was Joe Burrow in 19, right? And they won the national title. So you had that. Then you went and won the Big 12. You won when Quinn was hurt. You go into college football playoff, could have gone either way, right? You have 11 guys drafted. I mean, you back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes. The portal is great for blue bloods if you know what you're doing. You never should be an inexperienced team. So you put all that together, and then it's University of Texas. Look, I think there's certain things that happen as far as people covering Texas going for clicks. But like you said, this is Vegas. So you put all that together, and you look at the talent in the program and the talent that was brought into the program, and who's returning, where Texas is experienced, and how they've continued to build the roster. And I think that's where it comes out. And I also think the schedule is favorable for Texas. Georgia, to me, has a tougher schedule than Texas this year. I mean, just look at Georgia's road games. It's at Bama, it's at Ole Miss, it's at Texas. I think Georgia's going to drop an SEC game this year. I think that schedule, even as talented as they are, that's a tough schedule. So I think they're going to drop a game. I think Texas has a better schedule than Georgia to get to that 10.5, 11 number.
Yep. All right. It is Ryan Nelson, one of our frequent listeners, says that Georgia is juiced a little bit higher than Texas to go over the 10.5.
Yeah.
So thanks for saying that, Ryan, and explaining that a little bit.
I'll say this too. Let's give Georgia credit. If Georgia goes 11-1 on that schedule, they're really damn good. Let's be real, because how many teams would you send to this year at Texas, at Alabama, at Ole Miss? I mean, think about that. That's Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, and Quinn Ewers. That's Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Kalen DeBoer. I mean, who plays 3 better offensive coaches with experienced quarterbacks than that? If they go 11-1 on that schedule, tip of the duck cap hat to them.
Duck camp. All right, hey, that's going to do it for this morning's show. Coffee and Football, brought to you by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. Thanks to Matt, our producer, and to Jerry Hamilton, and to all of you. We had several super chats. Appreciate everybody joining us. We'll be back for tomorrow. We also have State of the Program later in the day, and then tonight we have the live stream. Blake Monroe is going to be heading up that live stream tonight with Rod Babers and CJ Vogel. For Jerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been On Texas Football. Hook 'em.